Thanks for listening to Curious Cat, the podcast that examines the shadowy space where science and the supernatural collide. I'm your host, Jennifer Holtz. Join me every week as I explore what it means to be a soul in a meat suit. Welcome to Curious Cat. When I stop and look at the state of gender, me and all that are listening that identify as women, we have lots to get mad about. Inequality in general, inability to drive a car in some countries, inability to own or inherit property in others, the paycheck gap in the United States, being invisible when it comes to drug trials and the user experience in general up until recently, which is why airplane seats hurt our necks, by the way. I could go on and on, but today is not about gender. It is a journey into the intersection between divine feminine and the divine masculine, which we all embody. It involves undoing old programming, parenting, teachings that left no space for the two sets of being, not to mention a place where they intersect, collide, and commingle. Let's get into it. Let's start with a little divine feminine and divine masculine 101. Divine feminine and divine masculine were explained to me this way, and I hope it resonates with you as well. Think of the divine feminine as the waters of a river, a grand, flowing, life-giving, dynamic body of water, creating its own motion and course. Now think of the divine masculine as the riverbank, the steep sides and the bottom that give the river structure, dimension, direct the flow. It holds this precious resource, protecting the vibrant waters. Yin and yang symbols embody dualism, and that includes the divine feminine and the divine masculine. Think of that black and white symbol just for a second. The black swoop has a dash of white in its center, and the white swoop contains a bit of black. Together they bring balance, harmony, respect. They are sound, and together they are a perfect whole. When the divine feminine and the divine masculine are in balance, it's a state of wholeness and harmony too, where both energies flow freely and complement each other, leading to a more fulfilling, rich, and balanced life. So why do we have to keep the feminine and masculine within balanced? I found this from Clarity Blueprint. When asked why do we need to balance our energies, they answered, it's important to understand why we need to balance the masculine and feminine energies in our daily lives. When these energies are balanced, they can create a powerful force that can help us reach our goals. Here's why we need to keep them in check: to improve our emotional well-being. When we have a balanced energy, it can help us to have a healthier emotional state. We are able to access our feminine qualities such as empathy and compassion, which can be vital for our mental health. To prevent masculine overdrive, when we have an imbalance of masculine energy, it can lead to traits like aggression and dominance. This may cause us to act in ways that we may later regret. Keeping our energies balanced will help us to stay in control of our actions. To strengthen our relationships, having a balanced energy will help us to create strong connections with others. We'll be able to express both our feminine and masculine qualities in a way that's respectful and understanding. This can help us to foster more meaningful relationships. relationships. I'm all for that. By understanding the importance of balancing our energies, we can start to take steps toward creating harmony in our daily lives. By being self-aware, paying attention to the here and now, and being aware of how both masculine and feminine energies function, one can achieve this balance. With the right tools and techniques, we can start to cultivate a healthier energy balance that can help us reach our goals and live a more fulfilling life. Now let's take a look at some common misconceptions about the feminine and feminine energy. From brainsmagazine.com comes this article. Writer Kautar El-Alawi writes, a few years ago, as I was exploring many healing modalities, I came across the divine feminine and the divine masculine work. I remembered feeling intrigued and confused at the same time. I was wondering, what is this idea of divine feminine or divine masculine? I checked in with my intuition and jumped into what seemed like a very foreign exploration. Sounds familiar to me. Here are the top 3 lessons this writer learned. The feminine and masculine, while they sound like they refer to gender, refer to characteristics we all carry within ourselves, yet we are generally socialized to overuse some of them based on our gender and culture. Both masculine and feminine have a wounded and healed version. This means working with balancing their energies within is in no way about blaming and shaming one energy over the other. Okay, I'm reading that again because I needed to hear it. This in no way is about blaming and shaming one energy over the other. That's counterproductive, right? It is about embracing both and calibrating them in a way that supports your well-being and inner balance. Yes, this work will challenge you to do away with the stereotypes rather than enforce them. And this brings me to the 3rd lesson. If we limit ourselves to the names and see them literally rather than figuratively, we risk missing out on the benefits of this work. Oh my gosh, what a great summary. So what are the characteristics of masculine feminine? The feminine is associated with flow, intuition, collaboration, and emotions, while the masculine is generally associated with focus, linearity, force, logic, and thinking. And naturally, they each have a shadow side. So let's dive into that. A wounded feminine will generally result in too many questions, little to no forward action, the neediness of others, powerlessness, and manipulation. A wounded masculine will generally result in excessive aggression, domination, control, and ungrounded action with lots of effort and force, yet incomplete solutions. Wow, she asks, do you recognize these characteristics within yourselves? And I do, because when I am defensive, and sometimes that's because I know I am wrong, it comes out as toxic masculinity within me. I'm defensive, I'm aggressive, but that's all rooted in insecurity and fear. So I interrupted her to say that, but she asks, do you see how they play out in your relationships? The way you uphold your boundaries, speak your truth, and manage your emotions? Though these characteristics may seem personal, they transpire in every leadership decision and action. Gender roles and our core construction of gender are melting away, yet we carry the heavy baggage of socialization that has created a rift between our inner masculine and inner feminine. Healing this inner schism leads us to a deeper sense of self-acceptance and a reclaiming of our wholeness as creative and resourceful beings beyond the labels imposed on us. As leaders, we increasingly recognize the value of being flexible and the multi-dimensional over our rigid patterns. Here are a few steps she offers to becoming an effective gender balance leader. Number 1, the first step in realizing this potential is to accept the fact that femininity and masculinity are not opposites, but two interdependent sets of characteristics that need to be developed and coexist in harmony. The next step, number 2, is to recognize which side is less developed and less realized. And that reminds me of a friend whose baby, they had to put a patch over one eye to strengthen the other weaker eye. So we have to put a metaphorical patch maybe on the side that is the strongest to develop the weaker side. She goes on though, for example, a lack of masculine energy generates too much compliance, hesitance, and restraint, while a lack of feminine energy produces too much authority, control, and self-centeredness. And number 3, finally, once both sides are developed, it's important to practice flexibility. Awareness of our weaknesses and strengths converts clarity into personal growth, directions, and strategies. And a masculine-feminine framework can support leaders in becoming more agile, holistic, and effective in their leadership, and I would argue like holistically empathetic. I found one woman's struggle to identify and then her journey seeking balance between feminine and masculine energies healed her gut. Yeah, really. Here it is. She writes, last week I led a talk and guided meditation for a co-working event called Control. CNTRL that explored the importance of balancing our masculine and feminine energy. If you're not familiar with this topic, it's worthy to investigate. In a nutshell, she writes, regardless of our biological sex, we all have a mix of masculine and feminine energy, and we need both in our daily lives. Masculine energy is characterized by doing and achieving and is molded by logic and reason. So it's my to-do list in the morning, I'm realizing. The feminine is more intuitive, oriented towards receiving and allowing and characterized by being. When these energies are balanced, we experience a greater sense of harmony and fulfillment. When they're askew, we feel more friction and stress in everyday life. Personally speaking, I found this doing-being balance a hard one to strike. Yeah, me too, author, me too. We live in a world that values doing and achieving above all else. And honestly, I have a lot of pride in being a doer. I can get stuff done and I love it. I hurtle myself into the productivity luge and I'm off to the races. Woo-wee, go me, sort of, she says. 4 years ago, out of college and into my career, I started to develop serious gut issues. I couldn't digest the foods I used to, and I had stomach cramps pretty much all the time. I was diagnosed with IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, and for the next 2+ years, I tried every elimination diet, probiotic, and food allergy test on the market to no avail. It was disheartening and uncomfortable, and I finally gave up on figuring it out and surrendered to living with the condition. Interestingly, around the same time, I began to notice correlations between my workload and my gut problems. Every time I went on vacation or to a meditation retreat, my symptoms would vastly improve. Then I started to notice improvements during the weekends. Over time, and I'm still sad to acknowledge how long this took, I was able to see the connection that was there all along. My tenacious productivity, my greatest source of pride and purpose, was also the source of my illness. When I finally realized this, I knew something had to shift. I began to see that endless productivity was not the holy grail of life, nor the measure of my self-worth. I realized that prioritizing Just being amidst the doing is a critical part of creating balance and a healthy life, not just on vacation or weekends, but every single day. Meditation is the most effective practice I found to help me shift out of doing and relax into being. In the space of practice, I'm reminded that it's okay to allow things to unfold instead of always directing or controlling them. I'm able to hear my intuitive voice beneath my frenetic left brain chatter. I'm also more connected to my body and its signals. When my IBS flares up, I know I need to slow down. Now I choose to pause and meditate, even if it's for 5 minutes, instead of pushing through, and I feel the benefits immediately. In neuroscience terms, meditation calms our nervous system, shifting the body out of fight or flight, which is doing, and into rest and digest, which is being. This shift supports so many aspects of our health, from improved blood pressure and digestion to boosted immunity and sound sleep. When I nurture my feminine energy, I also discover a wellspring of creativity, beauty, joy, and power, resources I'm able to draw from when I shift back into doing. This is a central part of my current practice, exploring how to infuse being energy into all of that doing, instead of taking small timeouts during the day and then throttling back into productivity. I'm learning to be more intentional about how I work. Is it possible to weave the benefits I see on the cushion, relaxed tension, a sense of spaciousness, awareness of my surroundings, deeper breathing, feelings of trust, into writing a blog post or drafting a budget? Can I balance both my masculine and my feminine energy so I can get a lot done while also maintaining a baseline of ease? I think so. This balance is something I continue to explore and cultivate, and I wanted to share a few tips that support me along the way. You'll see the emphasis is on the feminine being, since this seems to be what most of us modern folks need. I'm learning that balancing these energies, or anything in life for that matter, isn't something we accomplish and then check off the list. It's a fluid and continuous process, so trust your intuition. Make lots of little adjustments as you go. Remember self-compassion when you find yourself unbalanced, and perhaps most importantly, remember to have some fun. So here's 9 ways they offer to cultivate feminine energy. Meditate daily. Add a 10 to 20 minute meditation to your daily routine. Let your intellect take a rest while you make space to connect with your body, your natural presence, and your intuition. Dance. Movement creates fluidity between your mind and body and shakes things up. Try dancing, stretching, or even going for a lighthearted stroll. Chill the beep out. Take a bubble bath, light some candles, and slowly sip your favorite tea. Listen to soft music. Take time for you and only you. Let go of doing and simply be. That starfish pose has been my life. Going into menopause, I just lay on the floor as a starfish and let it just happen and wash away. Create, they say. Express yourself. Let go of control and forget about the end product. Grab some paints, a lump of clay, anything, and immerse yourself in the joy of making, solely to express your creative energy. Wow, that was powerful, wasn't it? Spend time in nature. Nature moves at a much slower and steadier pace than our rushed and frantic modern lives. It's the perfect example of a doing and being balance. And when we spend time in nature, our minds and bodies can retune to the natural rhythms of life. Find a park or go on a hike and relax with all of the sounds, the smells, and the sights. Take in the groundedness and steady presence of trees. Receive the feeling of sunshine on your skin. Welcome plants or flowers into your living space or your office, and regularly pause to appreciate their beauty and good energy. Share. Sharing is where vulnerability begins. When you open up and get real from the heart, you open doors to connect more deeply with yourself and everyone around you. Oh, and by the way, that goes with podcast episodes too. When I'm real and share my uglies with you guys, wow, that episode happens to get a lot more listens to than other things, even guest speakers. So that's kind of interesting. Flow is the final tip. Flow. Set aside a whole day when there's nothing on your agenda and let yourself wake up and flow through it. Don't plan anything. Just let your body and your intuition guide you to what's next, listening to what feels good. Oh, I love that so much. I found another article that was incredible from medium.com. The world is exhausted. The author writes, "How have you been feeling the past couple of years? The fatigue of COVID has manifested in multiple ways. We have seen higher levels of burnout at work, leading to a mass exodus and or the desire to work from home, and now the phenomenon of quiet quitting. People report struggling more with sleep, anxiety, depression, and addiction. Many people feel hopeless and fed up about the state of politics. We're suffering the effects of climate change. We're feeling the pain of the war in Ukraine and the fear of worldwide calamity. We have good reason to feel fatigued. It's not just people that are exhausted and in need of care. Our systems are failing. The economy, previously requiring life-saving injections, money, to keep its heart, people, and lifeblood spending flowing, is now suffering from a sort of runaway inflammation requiring an opposing intervention to slow it down. A body bouncing between extremes is not at ease, nor is our political system in any sort of homeostasis. Polarities here, too, are causing whiplash and nausea, making the system vulnerable to collapse. Nature itself is dysregulated as it vacillates between increasingly more extreme heats and colds. The world has good reason to be exhausted. And remember, he authored this during the COVID lockdowns. We might say that this fatigue, individual and collective, is a symptom of the pandemic. What if the pandemic, he asks, is a symptom of our collective fatigue? Symptoms highlight what is already broken and in need of attention. Symptoms point to problems that already exist. What if our world was already fatigued prior to COVID? What if the world already desperately needed rest and recovery? What should we expect to happen if we ignore this need? The more we ignore and suppress symptoms, the louder they become. Perhaps the world has been crying out for rest for far too long. Ignoring her pleas, she is forced to hand us something that will grab our attention. What better way to elicit this than a pandemic? COVID literally forced us to lock down and retreat. It forced us into our homes. It forced us to reconnect with family and friends, to neighbors, to reconsider what is important and meaningful. It forced a shutdown of supply chains and institutions and systems that were running on the adrenaline of keep doing, keep going. COVID was an opportunity to rest, reconsider, and restart a new way of being. What is this new way of being that is being called for? Our modern society is one built on doing, controlling, and knowing. These qualities are helpful in helping societies progress and evolve. But societies, indeed all systems from the micro to the macro, have to have balance. The Taoist yin-yang symbol is instructive here. Balanced with doing, controlling, and knowing, yang, is non-doing, allowing, and non-knowing, the yin. A society that does not balance these opposing qualities, that cannot harmonize yin and yang, is bound to develop symptoms. So what does a revolution of rest look like? The qualities of doing, controlling, and knowing are masculine energies, while non-doing, allowing, and non-knowing are feminine energies. When referring to masculine and feminine, they mentioned that it has nothing to do with being male or female elements inside. Masculine and feminine energies are divine qualities or archetypes that underlie our psyche and dictate ways of being. When out of balance, both individually and collectively, they produce symptoms. We live in a masculine society. I am not talking about problems with men in society, they iterate. That's a completely different topic. For centuries, we have been on a path of expanding productivity, growth, and achievement. More work, less play. Growth at all costs. Always be producing. These are the mantras humming along in the background of our modern day system. This is especially true today. Being busy and having little time for rest or even sleep is almost something to brag about. The increasing speed of life combined with the growing demands placed on our time and attention narrows space for rest, recovery, and retreat. There's nothing wrong with doing in and of itself. However, when not in balance with non-doing, this is a recipe for burnout and fatigue. We must balance the masculine with the feminine. We need a revolution of rest. The symptoms of the world are begging for it. So what is rest? They ask. The revolution of rest does not just include the literal rest that we so desperately need. Yes, everyone could benefit from more sleep, self-care, and other ways of getting TLC. Indeed, we could all benefit from more breaks, time off, and work-life balance in our jobs, which arguably would lead to more productivity. But the revolution of rest cannot just be focused on the physical. We will never arrive at what we truly need, and instead will be under the illusion that doing less at work or not working at all will solve the problem. It won't. We need a psychological and spiritual revolution of rest. So what does this mean? The psychological revolution of rest consists of bringing in the archetypal feminine into individual and collective consciousness. What would it look like to have less control and more allowance, less doing and more non-doing, less knowing and more non-knowing? On the individual level, it might look like being more receptive and less controlling of what's happening in our lives. Did that make you uncomfortable? It kind of made me feel a little fluttery. So it means I have to work on it, right? It also might mean trusting the universe. It might involve shifting from an attitude of judgment to self-compassion. It might mean opening ourselves to ideas and beliefs that contradict firmly held identities and ideologies. In government, this might look like loosening the grips of control, trusting people to make their own decisions. In business and economics, the divine feminine might soften our addiction to greed and growth, finding a sweet spot that placates our thirst for competition and success, as well as cooperation and contentment. In academia, this might involve more integration between the arts and the sciences. In science, this would involve less knowing and more not knowing. For nations, the feminine might invite more compromise and less imperialistic ambitions. Spiritually, the divine feminine encourages us to bring in love, acceptance, and nurturing into our experience, no matter what that is. Perhaps before changing at all, we simply need to love what currently is, both individually and collectively. The current moment is calling for rest. Let's bring in the physical, psychological, and spiritual energies that can help us meet the moment. Again, this was authored by Matthew S. Goodman on Medium.com. He's a clinical psychologist. He's the clinical assistant professor at USC, and he's the founder and CEO of The Middle Way. He writes at the intersection of psychology, spirituality, and society. Check the show notes for links to him and find more jewels. I hope you're inspired now to express all the sides of yourself. And I really, really hope when you do, some stranger notices your extra sparkle and shares a compliment with you. If you are reluctant to express it to the outer world, tuck a crystal of a color you're vibing into your backpack or your pocket. It can be your secret celebration of you. The Moon Awakening writes, quote, "Divine balance exists when protection meets healing, strength meets softness, and action meets intuition. Masculine energy provides safety while feminine energy nurtures and restores. When they come together in harmony, they create something powerful, wholeness," end quote. We're at our best when we make room for all parts of ourselves. That's where true peace lies and results in a solid night of sleep. That's where we can dream up creations and bring them to fruition. It's the place where we can be our most vulnerable, real versions of ourselves. And if we get slack for it, stick up for ourselves. It's a magical bridge that connects every precious bit and piece of our soul, bringing it into the light to cast a ripple that heals the world in our own mighty way. I hope that you notice all of the sides of yourself this week and smile at all of the blessings they bring you and all those around you. Until next week, stay curious. I love you.